Welcome, hello and hi my creative friends. Today we're checking out a classic drawing pencil by a very popular brand that everybody just sort of forgets about. From one of the oldest and largest pencil companies in the world comes a pencil known for its soft laydown, intense colours, excellent light fastness and great break resistance. But it's a pencil that's often overlooked by professionals and artists alike due to its very famous big brother, the Polychromos. Today I give to you the Faber-Castell Goldfaber. I use a lot of Faber-Castell products. I make no secret of it. Most of my artwork is done with Polychromos, and whenever I buy gifts, particularly for younger people, I always at the very least consider the super bright, super poppy pencils of the classic all black series. It's so readily available here in Australia and I know what I'm getting with it. But the Goldfaber! Between you and me, I've never even seen them before today, and that's so strange because, as you may guess, I go through a pencil or two. The Goldfaber is a relatively recent release coming in 2018, where at that time it was positioned as the intermediate step between the younger artist classic Grange and the professional artist Polychromos. Since then, Faber-Castell has also released the Black Edition, which positions the Goldfaber between them and the Polychromos, at least in Faber-Castell's eyes. I'm guessing they're aimed at students or hobbyists who are looking for a slightly better than average pencil but don't quite want to pay for the Polychromos. But in comparison to other Faber-Castell pencils, you just don't hear of them. So what are they like? Why don't people see more of these? And are they really just forgotten? Today, we're doing what we always do and throwing a series of tests at these pencils to answer that burning question: are they actually any good? First up, let's check out the design of the Faber-Castell Goldfaber pencils. This compact box right here is the Faber-Castell 48 tin of Goldfabers. If we jump over to the website, once we click through and find them, the Goldfabers come in tins of 12, 24, 36, and what we have here, the largest tin of 48. So quite a limited colour palette for this range. It also looks like they're available in a watercolour version of 48, 36 and 24. Strangely, if you continue to do a bit of snooping, they are available open stock as well, but not here in Australia. The only place I could find them sourced individually was the Faber-Castell US site. Back to our pencils. This 48 tin here is quite a small, compact, neat tin, and branding wise, it's very simple. It has the Faber-Castell logo, the title 48 Goldfaber, and the Creative Studio quality banner. The blue range or Creative Studio range for Faber-Castell is their student range, and this pack does feel very student. When we turn it over, annoyingly, I can hear the pencil shuffling around a bit, so I'm expecting a few broken tips. That's not really a great start, but underneath it, has quite a bit of info about these pencils, including the technical specification for the core and break resistance, as well as a decent sized, quite nice colour swatch. If we flip it and open it, and here are the pencils. Inside the lid, we have the Faber-Castell Castle. Personally, I'd love a castle and plan to visit this one day. It states that the Creative Studio enables both aspiring and hobby artists to express and enjoy their creativity. Very cute. If we have a look at this booklet here, again they reiterate that creative statement, as well as giving us the same swatches and information on the pencils. The pencils do look very stately. If these are aimed at students, like all the branding states, then these pencils look like they'd be aimed at higher education, as they look very sensible with the gunmetal grey barrels. The first row is supported by a tray you can lift out to see the row beneath. The trays are a little bit janky and a little flimsy, so I'd be careful storing your pencils in here. I think you could, but you'd want to be careful. Let's take a close-up look at the pencils. This is the Faber-Castell Goldfaber pencil. It's a round barrel pencil finished in a really matte, texturally pleasing gunmetal grey. Interestingly, in my hand, the swatch actually feels gloss in comparison to the rest of the pencil. It's quite a slim feeling barrel, coming in at 7.3mm, and overall is also a fairly average length of 170mm. Contained in all of this is a vibrant 3.3mm break resistant, water resistant, and apparently smudge proof wax-based core. Our barrel, like the classic series, is made of FSC certified wood to be, of course, environmentally sustainable. Looking along our pencil, we have the vibrant core, the matte barrel, in a white font, the word Goldfaber, followed by the Faber-Castell symbol, a small black ring, and a vibrant poppy colour swatch. On the other side is a made in Germany, a really giant serial number and barcode, and what looks to be the pencil's color number. Interestingly, no color name. The end is just a rounded paint-dipped swatch, which pleasantly feels quite glossy. I have to say I'm actually quite liking the look of the Goldfaber. It doesn't quite have the elegance that the Polychromos pencil has, but in comparison to, say, Faber-Castell's classic and black range, the matte finish gives it a really classy, quite sensible feel. It actually feels a lot like the Derwent Pro color pencil that we did a few weeks ago in its design, except that is, of course, for that giant barcode. It's really very dominant on these and sort of detracts from the elegance of them. The packaging here is fine. Nothing special really, it just doesn't have anything that jumps out. In a stationery store, even if you went looking for this little, and yes it feels quite little tin, it'd be so easy to miss the Goldfaber on the shelves looking like this. Maybe this is why you don't really hear about this pencil. It's there, but hiding. Look and feel aside, the most important thing, of course, is how these pencils perform. So let's have a bit of a play and test our Goldfaber. Our first test today is, of course, the saturation and vibrancy test. In this test, I'm looking at how bright and how saturated we can make these pencils and how consistent they are across various weights. Everybody's been loving the swatching, and I am too. It may push these videos a little bit long now, but it's giving us a much better idea of how the colors perform and look. We are very lucky today. It's actually pretty rare that I have all the colors for a pencil range, but with the Goldfaber topping out at 48 colors, we have them all. This kit may not seem huge, but let's see what Faber-Castell has done with it. I'm following Faber-Castell's swatching numbering system from the rear of the pack for these, from white 101 on a black swatch, all the way up to 251, which actually looks like it's going to be silver. There are only 48 colors in total with the Goldfaber, but one of the things we can assume with a numbering system like this is Faber-Castell has left it open to add new colors later if they choose, which is always great to see. I'm well into laying down our swatches, and I have to say, I'm noticing these pencils are quite comfortable to use. They are a little bit thin, but it's not so far an uncomfortable thinness. Looking at our swatches, they are relatively bright and quite saturated. The Goldfaber feels to be quite a hard pencil that's indenting a little into the paper, but they aren't what I'd call scratchy. They are overall pretty easy to control, and I'm quite pleased by how nice the saturation is here. Looking at the range as it goes down, the Goldfaber has quite a broad range of colors for a 48 pencil kit. There are a couple that feel a little similar in color. The blues and greens don't have a great deal of range, and as I'm finishing the swatch, there's not a lot of browns, but there is a gold and silver. And there we go. I love me a good swatch, and particularly a good swatch where we can see all the colors a range offers. Let's break out our scale and check out the second part of our saturation and vibrancy test. What I'm doing here is what we normally do. I'm picking 4 colors from this kit plus our dominant black and white, and we're going to measure those across various weights. The way we're going to be doing this is by putting down pigment from the pencils at 5 different pressures: 25 gram, 50 gram, 100 gram, 200 gram, and 400 grams, so light to heavy. As the pressure builds up, hopefully the pencil should become more and more saturated, which will show us just how consistent and predictable this saturation is. For any paper people out there, I'm just using basic 120 GSM white multimedia paper for these tests. Let's get started. For this test, our test pencils are red 121, green 166, blue 140, yellow 107, black 199, and white 101. Starting with our red on our 25 grams, and it's going down quite pleasantly at that weight. The green and now the blue are also very consistent with that red. Strangely, I think that yellow is a little bit more vibrant than our other colors, which is unusual for a yellow at 25 grams. That black is great, nice and black. Onto our 50 grams. The red and green are a nice doubling, while the blue feels a little light on here. The yellow, again, is very vibrant and like the black, pretty consistent. Let's check out the 100 grams. The red and green are looking and feeling so similar on these tests. I don't think they're a full doubling though. The blue has really jumped very nicely at the 100 grams and that yellow is so vibrant, definitely a doubling. That black is quite a dark black and again, a doubling. On to 200 grams. That's a really nice jump in vibrancy here at the 200 grams. I'm also noticing we're starting to burnish the page a bit here. The green, blue, yellow, and now black are all really quite consistent at 200 grams. Our final weight, our heaviest for today, is the 400 grams. The pencils are a little bit bouncy here with the added weight, but that red, green, and now blue are very strong colors, really burnishing the page, and that yellow almost looks like a liquid. It's that strong. Our black is quite a nice strong black. Let's do it all again, this time with our white pencil on black paper. This white is coming down pretty decently at the 25 grams, similar to our color swatches. The 50 is okay, but doesn't feel like a doubling. That 100 grams definitely isn't a doubling. It's pretty light. The 200 grams is a nice step up, and finally, the 400 grams. It's a step up, but again, not a doubling. Not bad overall. The Goldfaber has given us quite a consistent, vibrant pencil that's handled quite nicely throughout all of this test. The saturation and vibrancy for the Goldfaber is great overall. They are surprisingly vibrant pencils. Looking at the consistency over the different pressures, they have also done really well here. I did struggle a bit with them when I got into the 400 gram weights. I found them bouncing around a little on the scale, and I think that's got to do with the thinness of the pencil, as it just gets a little bit harder to hold with the higher pressures. Swatching wise, I am still really quite pleased at the color range Faber-Castell has given us here. For a 48 tin set, it has decent coverage. That's not to say I wouldn't like to see more. 48 is fine, but you're a little bit limited, so something like a 72 pencil kit would just really make this range a little nicer and a lot more usable. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is give these pencils a grade for saturation and vibrancy. Using our scale of A to F, with S being superb, let's give the Goldfaber a mark for some very consistent step-ups in pressure while still also being quite impressive saturation-wise. I'm giving the Faber-Castell Goldfaber an A- in saturation and vibrancy. They would have received a solid A if there was just more colors available in the range. Our next test is the single pencil gradient test. This is a pretty stock standard test for any pencil, and that's because it tells us a lot about the characteristics of that pencil, and importantly, how much control we have over it. What we're looking for here is a nice seamless gradient, while taking into account how easy it is to go from a very heavy pressure to a very light pressure, and how the pencil feels while doing so. Let's go check it out. As always, we're going to start with our red today. I'm keeping this on the scale just because it sometimes helps to show a little bit more about each pencil. The red pencil has dropped from that heavyweight into the lighter end quite quickly here. It has gradiented off nicely into the lightest end though. Our green is going down very similar to our red. It feels like it's quite tricky to get to that heavier weight and stay there and gradually bring it off with this pencil. Like the red, we're missing a lot of that mid-weight. Our blue is next, and this is gradienting much easier. We're going from our heavies through to our mids and again down into a really nice light end. The yellow is feeling very much like the blue here, and I think for once the yellow is turning out to be one of the best gradients. That black is coming from a really strong dark black, and while it's not quite as good as the blue and yellow, with that mid-range, it's not bad overall. Let's look at the white. Starting off quite dense, moving through our mids and into our lights. Pretty good overall. So that's our gradient test done, and these pencils gradient quite well. The red and the green both did the worst, with a big drop through the mid weights from the heavy to the lighter weights. It feels like this is because it's harder to be consistent with the pressure due to the pencil being quite thin, which means it's easier to miss that mid weight on our gradient. The blue, yellow, and black have gradiented much better overall. They have a nice heavy, mid, and light end, particularly that yellow. It's a good yellow. Overall, these gradients were relatively easy to create, and I'm really liking the variation in saturation that we're getting with them. It's also really great to see how well they've captured that light end, particularly for a wax-based pencil. So, Let's aggregate and grade our 6 pencils over our A to F scale. I'm giving the Faber-Castell Goldfaber a very well-deserved B for the gradients. Overall, really good, but it'd be nicer to have a slightly better mid-weight here. Let's see how the Goldfaber blend. Blending is really important when working with pencils. Not only does it take our art from the average to the extraordinary, but with only a full color range of 48, we're going to need to blend to make a wider range of color here. For this test, I'm taking our 4 primary colors, red to green and blue to yellow, and we're going to blend them together. What I'm looking for is a seamless uniting of the 2 colors and how they mix together. Coming down with our red gradient, we are starting off very dense, but much like our gradient test, as soon as we hit the mid-weights, the red just slides off into that lighter end. Let's start with our green. The red and the green have been pretty similar throughout this whole video, and predictably, it's again handling exactly the same as the red. No mid-weight and only heavy or light. As we cross over, we are getting a browny orange coming through, but it's not very strong. It's not mixing as well as I'd hoped. Onto our second blend, the blue and yellow. That blue gradient is going down much nicer than either the red or the green, very similar to before. As we start upwards with our yellow, we are starting to get a little bit of a better blend happening here. There's a little bit of green coming through, but again, it's not very vibrant. The Goldfaber blended okay. Not as well as I'd hoped, but okay. The red and the green did the worst here. There was blending, but as those were the 2 pencils that struggled to gradient, we didn't have much of a mid-weight to blend together. The orangey brown that came through was there, but not vibrant. The blue and the yellow side did much better. They were much better gradienting pencils, and that's really made a difference here for that blending. The green coming through is much more vibrant than the other half of our test. While these pencils are a wax-based pencil, and normally wax blends really well in this test, these really haven't. I suspect it's likely due to whatever they've added to make this a bit break resistant. It means it's a little harder, so blending isn't as easy with them. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the white factor with these ones and if that additional blending helps. For our mark today, using our scale, I'm going to grade the Goldfaber a B- for our blending test. And that puts them right here. Time for the white factor. The test where we see how that white works with our other colors. Will it burnish? Will it blend? Will it do anything at all? I'm actually chomping at the bit for this test for these pencils. I'm really interested to see how that white pencil changes our blends and, well, if it will change our blending at all. To do this, I'm bringing in those blending tests we just did and bring our white pencil in to lay over the top. As per usual, I'm only going across half of our blending test so we can see the difference between the 2 halves. When I bring that white in, I can definitely see a little bit of lightening in that red, but it also feels like it's doing more for the burnishing and blending than anything else. The green and red is combining more to give us more of that orangey brown color in the middle. If we move over to the blue and yellow, because there was much more pigment in that mid area, it's a much better result. Like the other side, it is helping to blend, making that green a more solid green, if a light green. So, the Goldfaber has performed really quite well here. They didn't blend as well as I'd hoped, but when adding that white pencil, it makes it a much nicer, much more solid blend, particularly with the new colors produced. It is also, of course, burnishing and making these colors lighter, but as it's not a super strong white, it's not making the colors unreasonably lighter. They're pretty close to what they started off with. Speaking of burnishing, it's particularly good in the lighter end of the gradient, which is great to see. I think all of this is really going to help with our art later to compensate for the blending issues and the smaller color range. For a very usable and quite handy white, I'm giving the Goldfaber a B for the white factor. It's not the strongest white we've seen, but it does help a lot with the blending here. This is a very simple test and a very useful one. We're simply going to compare the color put down to the color swatch on the pencils. For this test, I'm bringing in the pencil barrel and putting it next to the gradient that we created earlier. And then we're just going to compare them by eye to see how accurate the colors are. The red pencil is quite close in color, but it looks like the pigment is a bit lighter than the swatch on the pencil barrel. The green pigment is on the paper definitely quite a lot lighter, and I think yellower than the green on the pencil barrel, which is much more vibrant. The blue's not bad. It's a little bit harder to tell as it hasn't burnished as well as the others. Like the other colors, I'd say the pigment is a little bit lighter than the swatch. Our yellow isn't great. The vibrancy is similar, but it looks like the barrel swatch has more red in it than the pigment put down, which also might be slightly greener. Our black. The black put down has impressed me through all of these tests, but seeing it next to the barrel swatch, it's much lighter and much grayer. So there you have it. The Goldfaber color accuracy isn't great. Most of the pigments are a lot lighter than advertised on the barrel of the pencil, with the exception of maybe that yellow. And it's a different color on the barrel than the swatch. This is pretty common with so many pencils, and it's usually just about overselling how vibrant each brand is, which is such a shame because the colors the pigments put down are lovely and would make just as enticing swatches as to what we have here. Anyway, we're going to give the Goldfaber a B for color accuracy. And that puts them here. Let's break some pencils. Well, in a sciencey way anyway. I want to see how much pressure do we need to put on these pencils before they break. This is about more than fun. A pencil's breakpoint is all about consistency. A good pencil range has a consistent mix in their core, which in theory should give us a similar snapping point across our pencils. A bad one, or a range that has less quality in its manufacturing, can be all over the place. This test also tells us about how hard these pencils are. To make this test as consistent as possible across all the pencils we're going to review, I've set up a couple of controls. I'm going to sharpen each pencil to a point. I'm then going to dull them slightly by drawing 3 lines at pressure. Basically, this will make sure we don't have a super fine point that will break immediately. I'm then going to be using a 45-degree square to get a consistent angle of pressure. Makes sense? Let's go break some leads. Starting with our red pencil and setting it up. I've been feeling through this whole test that these are a bit hard, and of course, because of the marketing around the high snap point, I'm expecting these to be a bit stronger than normal. We're about to see. The weight is climbing and we are above 500 grams. 700, 800, 900, snap! 1,055 grams, quite a respectable strength. Onto our green, which has been very similar to the red through most of these tests today. I've set it up and the weight is on. 600, 700, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and snap. 1,387, quite a bit harder than the red. Now our blue, if we quickly set ourselves up, 1, 2, 3, and get our 45-degree angle, time for some weight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 500, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and snap. 1,331 grams. Very consistent with our green. Onto our yellow. I've really liked working with this yellow today as it's been so vibrant across all of our tests. The tip is off and the angle is done and the weight is climbing. 400, 600, 800, 9, and snap. 1,042 grams, similar to our red. Onto our black. Overall, it's been quite a nice black through all these tests, but I'm not sure if it'll be a hard or soft pencil. We're set up and the weight has started. 500, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1 kilo, 11, 12, snap. 1,365 grams, quite similar to our green and blue. Our final pencil, the white. Like the black pencil, whites are often harder or softer than the rest of the range. Let's see with this one. Our tip is off and the angle is finished. 5, 6, 700, 800, and snap. 847 grams. Well, as always, this test was pretty eye-opening and of course, fun. Using the Goldfaber today, quite a few things have made me feel like these were going to be and are harder pencils. Looking at the scores, they are, but not super hard. Our lowest breakpoint was the white at 847 grams and our highest was the green at 1,387 grams. But surprisingly, the pencils weren't all over the place. The red and the yellow were 13 grams difference and the green, blue, and black were only about 50 grams different, which does say to me there's a bit of care in the manufacturing with these. and likely a plan as to why they are what they are. Our average break point was 1,171 grams, which if we put them on our graph, that puts them interestingly right here, just above the Faber-Castell Black Edition and below the Crayola coloured pencils. That does make a bit of sense, as both the Black Edition and the Crayola have similar anti-break technology included in their pencil design. Okay, for the break factor for consistency in its inconsistency, I'm giving the Goldfaber a B. Tough and hard pencils, but still a pleasure to use. It's time for our final test. Do these pencils spark joy, or do they cause despair? This test is just my personal opinion, which I've formed across using these today. Do the Faber-Castell Goldfaber spark joy? Rather than you look at my face, let's test them out with some art while we chat. With our art today, I was trying to draw something that suits the color range of the pencils we have available, but also something that's going to work within the limitations of those pencils. The feel I've had with the Goldfaber as I've used them has been that of what I'd call a very classic drawing pencil. So rather than a landscape or something everyone else does with the Goldfaber, we're going to draw a fun little flower princess portrait. Let's start at the start. Looks-wise, these pencils are classic and simple, but really very elegant, except for that giant barcode. That takes away from our enjoyment quite a bit. They feel quite thin and light, which I'm finding overall I like. They are also pretty comfortable. However, after a time, the thinness of that barrel, especially when trying to achieve the heavier weights for the more saturated tones, does become a bit painful in the hand. But for something so light, I would say that's to be expected. A lot of the reasons these pencils feel a bit forgotten is that they're very understated. I love that in the actual pencil, but Faber-Castell could and should put a little bit more into the packaging design and marketing these pencils. You just don't see them advertised anywhere, and the packaging can best be described as forgettable. I'm really very glad that I got the 48 set, because I really am using nearly every single color in the artwork I'm creating today. 48 sounds like a lot of color, and while there is quite a good color range there are several colors that feel a bit close to each other. I think the Goldfaber are unique enough and really quite good enough for Faber-Castell to release a wider color range. A 72 or higher kit would really be welcomed with these. Looking at our tests, they did fairly well overall. We got lots of different layers of saturation quite easily with varying pressures, from ultralight to really dense and saturated. Sometimes I find wax-based pencils aren't the best at getting those lighter hues, but the Goldfaber has done really well here. If we look at the blending test, I feel like this is the main area in which they've struggled today, which is a shame because it's such an important part of any art. In our test, I really wasn't as impressed by the amount of blending that we had. I felt, and it does feel now while I'm drawing, that the pigment isn't combining. I feel Faber-Castell has gone a little too hard on the whole non-breaking thing, and if these pencils were just a fraction softer, they'd blend much more easily. Anyway, with our tests, once we added that white pencil, everything got a little bit easier. The white has helped blend and lighten the other pencils to a point that makes them much more versatile. I'm especially finding it handy in the art that I'm making today. I'm trying to make a floaty foreground and background for my artwork here, and it's doing really well. I'm finding that this white is really more of a burnishing than a lightening tool. However, I am able to use it in some circumstances here where the other pigments aren't too dense or dark as a lightening white. Obviously, it works where I want my whimsical floaty look, but I haven't really used it much for my girl, which is my focal point, because I want to keep her nice and saturated and sharp, which makes it a bit hard with the pencils that don't blend super easy. But the fact that I've easily adapted to this in only one artwork says a lot about the pencils. I don't mind changing the way that I draw a bit to suit my pencils, as long as the effects are consistent and I know what to expect every time I use them, and the Goldfaber are very consistent. The Goldfaber are a bit of a steal price-wise. On Amazon, they're $72 Australian for the 48 kit, which is $44 US, which for pencils like this is a great price. The 36 is $66 Australian, the 24, $36 Australian, and the 12 is only $16.95 Australian. So really reasonable for what's turned out to be unexpectedly very decent pencils. I'd really suggest getting the 48 kit as the blending problems are there and you want as many colors as possible for that variety. Well, we're almost done with our artwork here. I am struggling as always with my frame here as I just don't do geometry well, but I am pretty happy with the overall outcome. I think our flower princess has turned out very cute and I've managed to use pretty much every pencil in her, which is what we like to see. So do the Faber-Castell Goldfaber spark joy for me? Yes, it's a big fat yes. It's obvious that I've been pretty impressed with these Forgotten pencils. They're vibrant, really easy to use, and they're usually comfortable, very affordable, and very consistent and predictable, which is wonderful. These are actually pencils that I think I could incorporate into my day-to-day work, and that's a big statement for me, so well done, Faber-Castell. So for this very underrated pencil and for possibly my new go-to smaller pencil set, for today's Spark Joy Factor, the Faber-Castell Goldfaber pencils receive a B+ for my joy. And that puts them right here on our graph. Well, all our tests are done. All we have to do now is work out our final score. How I'm going to do that is by aggregating all the grades we have thus far and coming up with our final mark. So for our final overall score for the Faber-Castell Goldfaber pencils, they receive a B. Well done, Faber-Castell. And on our big scoreboard, that puts them right in here. As always, I like to try and class each pencil with a category: student, hobbyist, or professional. These pencils are surprisingly very close to being classed as professional, but the difficulty with the blending means they don't quite make it. So today, I'm going to class these as hobbyist. Putting them right here, possibly one of the best hobbyist pencils we've seen. Well, that's the end, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging around with me today. I really hope you enjoyed looking at the Faber-Castell Goldfaber pencils. A pencil I don't think I'm going to find as easy to walk past in the future. What do you think? Have you heard of these? Have you found these, or even, dare I say it, used them? What did you think? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to get your own set of the Goldfaber, I've stuck some links in the comments. Every little click helps a tiny bit. For next week, we're checking out a massive set of budget pencils, the K-Law. Apparently, these are also known as the Brut Funa and the Sal Color. Whatever they're called, there's a lot of them. But until then, if you want more stuff, have a little looks at the links below. We have a very active Discord that you can sign up for. And if you want to chat, come and hang out with us on Twitch. I'm there most days. That's it for now. Have a brilliant day, everyone. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.